Good morning. Thank you for joining me today. This morning, we'll be in Job, chapter 1, verse 1, through chapter 3, verse 26. There was a man in the land of Uz, whose name was Job, and that man was pure and upright, one who feared God and turned away from evil. 7 sons and 3 daughters were born to him. His possessions included 7,000 sheep, 3,000 camel, 500 yoke of oxen, and 500 female donkeys. In addition, he had a very great household. Thus he was the greatest of all the people in the east. Now his sons used to go and hold a feast in the house of each one in turn, and they would send and invite their 3 sisters to eat and to drink with them. When the days of their feasting were finished, Job would send for them and sanctify them. He would get up early in the morning and offer burnt offerings according to the number of them all. For Job thought, perhaps my children have sinned and cursed God in their hearts. This was Job's customary practice. Now the day came when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also arrived among them. The Lord said to Satan, "Where have you come from?" And Satan answered the Lord, "From roving about on the earth and from walking back and forth across it." So the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one like him on the earth, a pure and upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil." Then Satan answered the Lord, "Is it for nothing that Job fears God? Have you not made a hedge around him and his household and all that he has on every side? You've blessed the work of his hands, and his livestock have increased in the land. But extend your hand and strike everything he has, and he will no doubt curse you to your face." So the Lord said to Satan, "All right then, everything he has is in your power, only do not extend your hand against the man himself." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord. Now the day came when Job's sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in their oldest brother's house. And a messenger came to Job, saying, "The oxen were plowing, and the donkeys were grazing besides them, and the Sabaeans swooped down and carried them all away. And they killed the servants with the sword, and I alone escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "The fire of God has fallen from heaven and has burned up the sheep and the servants. It has consumed them, and only I alone, escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "The Chaldeans formed 3 bands and made a raid on the camels and carried them all away. And they killed the servants with the sword, and only I alone, escaped to tell you." While this one was still speaking, another messenger arrived and said, "Your sons and daughters were eating and drinking wine in the oldest brother's house, and suddenly a great wind swept across the wilderness and struck the 4 corners of the house, and it fell on the young people, and they died, and only I alone, escaped to tell you." Then Job got up and tore his robe. He shaved his head, and then he threw himself down with his face to the ground. He said, "Naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will return there. The Lord gives, and the Lord takes away. May the name of the Lord be blessed." In all this, Job did not sin, nor did he charge God with moral impropriety. Again, the day came when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also arrived among them to present himself before the Lord. And the Lord said to Satan, "Where do you come from?" Satan answered the Lord, "From roving about on the earth and from walking back and forth across it." Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? For there is no one like him on the earth, a pure and upright man, one who fears God and turns away from evil, and he still holds firmly to his integrity, so that you stirred me up to destroy him without reason." But Satan answered the Lord, "Skin for skin. Indeed, a man will give up all that he has to save his life. But extend your hand and strike his bone and his flesh, and he will no doubt curse you to your face." So the Lord said to Satan, "All right, he is in your power, only preserve his life." So Satan went out from the presence of the Lord, and he afflicted Job with a malignant ulcer, from the sole of his feet to the top of his head. Job took a shard of broken pottery to scrape himself with, while he was sitting among the ashes. Then his wife said to him, "Are you still holding firmly to your integrity? Curse God and die." But he replied, "You're talking like one of the godless women would do. Should we receive what is good from God and not also receive what is evil?" In all this, Job did not sin by what he said. When Job's 3 friends heard about all his calamity that had happened to him, each of them came from his own country: Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They met together to come to show sympathy for him and to console him. But when they gazed intently from a distance, but did not recognize him, they began to weep loudly. Each of them tore his robes, and they threw dust into the air over their heads. Then they sat down with him on the ground for 7 days and 7 nights. Yet no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his pain was very great. After this, Job opened his mouth and cursed the day he was born. Job spoke up and said, "Let the day on which I was born perish, and the night that said, a man has been conceived. That day, let it be darkness, let not God on high regard it, nor let light shine on it. Let darkness and the deepest shadow claim it. Let a cloud settle on it, let whatever blackens the day terrify it. That night let darkness seize it, let it not be included among the days of the year. Let it not enter among the numbers of the month. Indeed, let that night be barren, let no shout of joy penetrate it. Let those who curse the day curse it, those who are prepared to rouse Leviathan. Let its morning stars be darkened, let it wait for daylight, but find none, nor let it see the first rays of dawn. Because it did not shut the doors of my mother's womb on me, nor did it hide trouble from my eyes. Why did I not die at birth, and why did I not expire as I came out of the womb? Why did the knees welcome me, and why were there 2 breasts that I might nurse at them? For now I would be lying down, and would be quiet. I would be asleep, and then at peace, with kings and counselors of the earth who built for themselves places now desolate, or with princes who possessed gold, who filled their palaces with silver. Or why was I not buried like a stillborn infant, like infants who have never seen the light? There the wicked cease from turmoil, and there the weary are at rest. There the prisoners relax together. They do not hear the voice of the oppressor. Small and great are there, and the slave is free from his master. Why did God give light to one who is in misery, and life to those whose soul is bitter, to those who wait for death that does not come, and search for it more than for hidden treasure, who rejoice even to jubilation, and are exultant when they find the grave? Why is light given to a man whose way is hidden, and whom God has hedged in? For my sighing comes in place of my food, and my groanings flow forth like water. For the very thing I dreaded has happened to me, and what I feared has come upon me. I have no ease, I have no quietness, I cannot rest. Turmoil has come upon me. So you have here Job, who was um, blameless and upright in the land of Uz. For background, this is probably one of the oldest books in the Bible. Yeah, and I don't even know if we know for sure where Uz was. The text of Job is so ancient that in some places we don't really know the exact meaning of some of the words, yet the general meaning is clear. It's fascinating to think that as we open this text, we may be faced with the earliest of all written accounts of a human being's relationship with Yahweh, the one true God. Which, it's interesting. The question of evil and why does suffering exist and why do good people suffer is certainly one that's been on man's mind for as long as there's been man. And you have the book of Job here that stands as kind of an answer to that. Because here you have Job, the most righteous man in the land, and he was wealthy and had a whole bunch of stuff, and then you have behind the scenes the Satan, or this accuser, who comes before God, and God says to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? And Satan says, he doesn't fear you for nothing. It's because of all the great stuff that you've given him that he fears you. But let me take it away from him, and he'll curse you. So he does so. And Job doesn't curse him. And the same exchange happens, and this time Satan says, um, give me his health, and this time he'll curse you. And so you have a malignant ulcer developing on Job, and yet in all this he doesn't curse him, even at the behest of his wife, who says, are you still holding on to your, I think, righteousness or something, to your integrity, curse God and die. Yeah, so even at the behest of his wife, he says, should we not, should we only receive what is good from God and not also receive what is evil? And I'm pretty sure that the word evil here isn't like moral evil that we're familiar with, but more of calamitous evil. So his friends find him, and they sit with him in silence for a whole week, which was great of them. But then Job is sick of it, and he opens his day and curses. He opens his mouth and curses the day of his birth, saying that he would have preferred to have died before he was born than to experience the suffering and calamity here. Showing the great anguish that Job is going through. But notice that the reason for Job's suffering is never revealed to Job. At the very end of the book, you get that you get God coming down and essentially explaining the wonders of creation to Job and saying, if these things boggle your mind, then how do you expect to, well, I don't know. How do you expect to take me to account for what he's done, or what God's done, essentially? Saying essentially that reality is so complex that man wouldn't get it, frankly. So that makes it clear that suffering that happens to us isn't necessarily the result of some evil thing that we do. It's complicated. Certainly there are instances of like do evil and receive suffering, like in the thief of in the case of a thief that gets caught. He does evil and then he must suffer the punishment. But sometimes, like in the case of Job, it's not because of anything wrong that he's done. And likewise, you have the very case of Jesus, where he was completely blameless and without sin, and he went and suffered the maximum punishment. And it wasn't as a result of doing wrong that Jesus was punished, but rather so that you know, glory could be given to God, and we could all be saved. So yeah, it's complicated. But yeah, Job is one of my favorite books just because of I mean, it's not like I've experienced the suffering that Job has, but I think it's something that we can all relate to of experiencing suffering in our lives, and sometimes it just isn't as a result of doing evil, which Job's friends are constantly admonishing Job. Hey, Job, here's how it works: do evil things, get punishment. So you're being punished. So you must have done evil things. So fess up, Job. And that's essentially the extent of their advice to Job. Um, but it's more complicated than that. So yeah. And ultimately, every good thing that we have is from God. Um, Job analyzed his situation in a godly and wise way. Job understood that he came into the world with nothing, so everything he had was indeed a blessing from the bounty of God. If he had now less, it was still more than he came into this world with, and more than he would take with him to the world beyond. His prior prosperity was not due to luck or mere human ingenuity, it was because of the great and powerful blessing of God upon his life. God was in control of his life, and no matter what the immediate source of adversity or tragedy was, it had to pass through the loving and wise hands of God before it could touch him. God was worthy to be blessed and praised in any and all circumstances of his life. Blessed be the name of the Lord. This was the expression of worship mentioned in the previous verse. Job was able to bless the name of God even when he was specifically and severely tempted to curse the name of God. Hmm. Yeah. Oh, to have the strength of Job. Carrying on, 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 1 through 17. Pursue love and be eager for the spiritual gifts, especially that you may prophesy. For the one speaking in a tongue does not speak to people but to God, for no one understands. He is speaking mysteries by the Spirit. But the one who prophesies speaks to people for their strengthening, encouragement, and consolation. The one who speaks in a tongue builds himself up, but the one who prophesies builds up the church. I wish you all spoke in tongues, but even more that you would prophesy. The one who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues, unless he interprets, so that the church may be strengthened. Now, brothers and sisters, if I come to you speaking in tongues, how will I help you, unless I speak to you with revelation or with knowledge or prophecy or teaching? It is similar for lifeless things that make a sound, like a flute or harp. Unless they make a distinction in the notes, how can what is played on the flute or harp be understood? If, for example, the trumpet makes an unclear sound, who will get ready for battle? It is the same for you. If you do not speak clearly with your tongue, how will anyone know what is being said? For you will be speaking into the air. There are probably many kinds of languages in the world, and none is without meaning. If then I do not know the meaning of a language, I will be a foreigner to the speaker, and the speaker a foreigner to me. It is the same with you. Since you are eager for manifestations of the Spirit, seek to abound in order to strengthen the church. So then, one who speaks in a tongue should pray that he may interpret. If I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays, but my mind is unproductive. What should I do? I will pray with my spirit, but I will also pray with my mind. I will sing praises with my spirit, but I will also sing praises with my mind. Otherwise, if you are praising God with your spirit, how can someone without the gift say amen to your thanksgiving, since he does not know what you are saying? For you are certainly giving thanks well, but the other person is not strengthened. Hmm. So now Paul shifts topics here to spiritual gifts. Well, I mean, he's been on spiritual gifts for a while, but um, it seems like a guiding principle that Paul is establishing is building up of the church in unity type thing that Paul wants the church to be edified. And it seems the Corinthian Christians were interested in pursuing the spiritual gifts. But specifically, he says they should seek to prophesy. Because of the edification that it brings. And it sounds as though the gift of tongues is something that's dedicated not as a man-to-man type of communication, but more of a man to God, and that it requires an interpreter. So something akin to prayer. Not only is the gift of prophecy directed towards men, it is also largely positive in its character. Often when a negative word is spoken, it is not truly a word from God at all, or it is a word meant only for the individual, not for someone else. Edification is building up. It is a construction term, and speaks of our being built up in the Lord. A word of prophecy will build someone up, not tear him or her down. Exhortation is encouragement. It is like the speech from the coach in the locker room before the big game, rallying the team to go out and perform as they were trained to perform. A word of prophecy will encourage someone, not discourage him or her. Comfort has the idea of not only consoling but also strengthening. It doesn't just cry with someone hurting. It puts its arms around them and strengthens them to carry the load. A word of prophecy will strengthen, not weaken someone. Yeah. And regarding prophecy, I think oftentimes it shows the outcome of the current set of circumstances. That is, if you continue what you're doing, then it will bring pain and death or suffering. And if you turn from that, then that's good. Yeah. So. He desires more that you prophesied. As good as the gift of tongues is, Paul sees prophecy as better for the church as a whole. Why? Because he who speaks in a tongue edifies himself, but he who prophesies edifies the church, and the focus here is that the church may receive edification more than the individual. Paul's context in 1 Corinthians 14 is more focused on what the Corinthian Christians do when they come together as a church than on what they do in their own devotional life. There are things that are fine for a Christian to do in their own devotional life which may be disruptive, annoying, or self-exalting for a Christian to do in a church meeting. The gift of tongues is one of those things. Since Paul focuses on when the Corinthian Christians come together as a church, it is clear why he regards the gift of prophecy as greater. Okay, carrying on. Psalm chapter 37, verses 12 through 29. Evil men plot against the godly and viciously attack them. The Lord laughs in disgust at them, for he knows that their day is coming. Evil men draw their swords and prepare their bows to bring down the oppressed and needy, and to slaughter those who are godly. Their swords will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. The little bit that a godly man owns is better than the wealth of many evil men. For evil men will lose their power, but the Lord sustains the godly. The Lord watches over the innocent day by day, and they possess a permanent inheritance. They will not be ashamed when hard times come. When famine comes, they will have enough to eat. But evil men will die. The Lord's enemies will be incinerated. They will go up in smoke. Evil men borrow, but do not repay their debt. But the godly show compassion and are generous. Surely those favored by the Lord will possess the land, but those rejected by him will be wiped out. The Lord grants success to the one whose behavior he finds commendable. Even if he trips, he will not fall headlong, for the Lord holds his hand. I was once young, now I am old. I have never seen a godly man abandoned, or his children forced to search for food. All day long he shows compassion and lends to others, and his children are blessed. Turn away from evil. Do what is right, then you will enjoy lasting security. For the Lord promotes justice and never abandons his faithful followers. They are permanently secure, but the children of evil men are wiped out. The godly will possess the land and will dwell in it permanently. And finally, Proverbs chapter 21, verses 25 and 26. The desire of the sluggard puts him to death, for his hand refuses to work. All day long he is craving, while the righteous gives and does not hold back. It's interesting. The focus of the two is different. The sluggard is focused on his own need and want, and even though he's focused on it, it's not fulfilled. But the righteous is focused on the needs of others and providing for them as well. Okay, well, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you have a great day. Bye.